Ambassador Sarek is extremely fond of Mozart. Lieutenant Worf has put Ensign D'Amato on report for insubordination, and Suzanne wanted to go to the Arboretum. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation. Maybe you've heard of it. Season 3, Episode 23, Sarek. Television story and teleplay by Peter S. Beagle from an unpublished story by Mark Cushman and Jake Jacobs, directed by Les Landau. Special, huge, giant thanks to Bill Erickson, aka War Dogheim, out in Montana, for sponsoring this episode. Thank you very much, Bill Erickson, out in Montana. This was May 12th, 1990. Where were you, and how you doing, Cirroc Lofton?
I'm good. I'm doing good. You said May 12th, 1990?
Yep.
All right, I like to write those things down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we just passed that 24-year anniversary. People were tweeting about it a little bit ago. So This episode here, great choice, Bill War Dogheim Erickson, for sponsoring this one. This is a memorable episode for me. I remember seeing it when I was a kid, and there were some moments that I just will always remember that were infused in my mind. One is when Sarek sheds the one tear at the recital, and the other one is when Sarek's going, illogical, illogical, illogical. And I'm just like, whoa, that dude can act like a monster. Amazing.
Yeah.
What did you think of it, though? This is your first time.
Well, overall, I really liked it. In the beginning, I thought it started off slow for me. And there was a moment about maybe 15 minutes in where I was looking at the clock, like, when is this going to, turn up the pace a little bit? But then when it turned up, it really got good. So it almost made me wish, after having watched it, that the ending part was longer. The part where Sarek inhibits or has the mind meld with Picard and basically has that, that his swagger back. I would have liked maybe that to have lasted a little bit longer, and maybe to even see more of the Picard as Sarek scene, because that was also, I thought, another highlight for this episode. Just the pace, just getting into it took a little bit of time. I felt like at some point that maybe Sarek was somebody that I was introduced before. Is this a character that we've seen before?
Yes, and by the way, the actor, of course, everybody knows, is Mark Lenard, who is a legend in Star Trek. He had previously appeared, yes, in Star Trek, the original series. He was in Star Trek, the motion picture. Let me see. Hang on. What was he even in an episode? Yeah, what episode? He was in 2 episodes. One is just a Romulan commander. And oh wait, whoops, I had the wrong button here, but yeah, once he played a Romulan commander, and I believe, that was in The Balance of Terror, which was kind of the episode that was redone in Strange New Worlds recently. If you remember that, the end of season 1. And then he's in an upcoming episode as Sarek, upcoming for us and Walter. We will see his character being introduced. And he was also in a couple movies of Star Trek. What was it? He was in the animated series, 1 episode. I did not realize that. He did the voice. Anyway, so he's been back a few times. Actually, it looks like 3 movies, 4 movies. He was in 4 original series movies, yeah.
Yeah, he's a fantastic actor. I thought, he knocked this character out of the park. It's good also to see when somebody that Picard has a reverence for the Picard that comes out. There's a different Picard that comes out when he's not the, the head honcho on around, when there's somebody that he has reverence for or that he admires or that he respects. There's a whole different tone that comes with the performance, especially when the actor himself can deliver that kind of tone as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you there. Because usually he's the one that either receives the reverence or expects it. He's the captain, he's the champ, and people are like, wow, Captain Picard, you're so great. You're so funny. He's like, yes, I know. But it's really, you're right. It's a totally different tone. And in a lot of ways, a better Captain Picard when he's not fawning over somebody. He just has like this immense respect for this man and what this man has done. And, it probably wasn't too hard for Patrick Stewart to act that way with somebody like Mark Leonard, who is a very accomplished actor. I wonder if I'm sure he must have already known about him. But yeah, I totally agree. It definitely humanizes Picard in a different way. And it's very endearing to see him revering somebody else like that.
Yes. And then also it reminds me in some ways of how Brock Peters, how Avery felt about Brock Peters, and the kind of reverence that he had for the work that he had put in the foundational, work that he put in for paving the way. So there was this kind of thing that happens when Picard sees this character. There's a compassion level there that you rarely see, because he truly is compassionate for this man who he has such reverence for. And because he has that compassion, it softens him up. It makes him look more like he has more empathy. And the considerations that he was going through, the lengths that he was going through, it actually took the anger of Riker to, in that moment, say, damn it, why don't you tell him that it can't be done, and they kind of had that argument, which I thought was another great scene, because we rarely see the two of them kind of butt heads like that, but I actually enjoyed it momentarily.
Yeah.
So that's what I liked about this episode. It gave us opportunities to see headbutting and drama in places where we see a lot of respect, cordial behavior between crewmen, right? And in this episode, it gave us the vehicle to, hey, let's explore Wesley and talking shit to,
That was hilarious when he's like, at least I'll be hanging out with more than just a good book tonight. I was like, yes. Oh my God, call the ambulance on poor Geordi LaForge.
Yeah.
Even the teenage dork is talking shit to him now.
Yeah.
Come on.
And by the way, I don't care if there was some kind of medical explanation or whatever for why they were talking that way. Those words still gonna hurt and resonate past that point, right? It's not like Geordi's gonna say, Wesley, I was angry and you were angry because some kind of pheromones were in the air that this Vulcan was emitting. No, it's gonna be like, bro, you hurt my feelings.
You can't take that back. Like Wesley could be like, sorry, I didn't mean it. And Geordi's like, fine, you're sorry. But you did.
But it was true, though. Yeah, but it was true, though. That's the problem. The problem is the truth behind it. Not that it was hurtful, is that it was true. Because he says, what does he say? At least I don't have to find my women on the holiday.
I mean, that was ruthless.
Did he call him a holodeck hunter? It was ridiculous. I couldn't believe that it's like, at least I got a real woman. That was ridiculous to me.
And
that was
she's an ensign, so it's an older woman, by the way. Presumably. Yeah. Presumably.
Clearly, because Beverly was not happy about it.
It'd be funny is if instead of whatever, name that they said, he said Sonia Gomez, like the girl that Geordi was walking with and kind of being like, kind of chatting her up. And then the next season, he's like, hey, me and Sonia Gomez are going to party, just the two of us. You can't come, no big
Yeah,
deal.
she
But
told me not to bring you.
yeah, but you can hang out with her on the holodeck. You and the holodeck her, I guess, on a beach or whatever weird crap you do.
Yeah, that was so this story provided a vehicle for those kinds of scenes, which I thought were fantastic. Just to see those moments of them arguing. Again, back to the Riker Picard moment. I love that exchange between them. And he says to him, then tell him there's no way. And then Picard says, don't you tell me what to do.
I know. I was like, calm down. The wimp. But here was my one qualm with that. Data stops me and goes, Captain, Commander. And then they stop and they snap out of it. How come nobody snaps out of it and like apologizes? Picard kind of did. He says, yes, of course, you're right, Will, or whatever. But then he didn't say, but don't ever can talk to me like that again, And also he didn't say, yes, of course, you're right, Commander. And then Riker should have said something. Riker should have said,
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
didn't though. He actually held the anger a little bit.
He's like, yeah, I'll talk to my superior officer that way.
He's like, what's wrong with that guy? What's this problem?
Yeah,
that was the look he kind of.
Plenty more where that came from. Watch it.
Yeah. That's the exact look. He kind of looked over at Data like, damn right.
He fixed his shirt.
Gave him one of those pull downs. Damn right.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was fun to watch. It was good acting for me. It was fun to see a little bit. I love seeing characters playing out of character a little bit when they get a chance to still be themselves and play slightly different. Because then it gives you a different appreciation of how they played the character itself. When you get to contrast a different way, right? I get to see, for example, Picard get the angry Picard versus the Picard who's more reserved and calculated. So you get different variations of people, but this episode had a couple of fun scenes to me. When that whole brawl scene broke out in the mess hall, I was thinking about you. I was like, I bet she's watching this choreography, watching how these guys are.
And I was looking, yes, and I was looking
Yes.
for Dennis Madalone, and I didn't see him. Oh, by the way, shout out to Dennis Madalone. This is the shirt that he gave us here, so shout out to him. Danger, Dennis Madalone, stunt coordinator and stunty. A couple of times I was like, oh, there he is. And I paused. I was like, oh, shit, that's not him. But I feel like he was in there somewhere. But I'm like, I can't watch this 10 times to find him. I'll just assume he's in there. He's in there somewhere. He's certainly
he's got to be
coordinating. But yeah, you're right.
He's got to be in there. But there was a few fight scenes that was great. And then actually, the one that I kind of double backed on a little bit was when Geordi's in between the two Starfleet officers and they're both like reaching over him, like
Worf.
And Worf kind of like
that was embarrassing. That one guy was like, he's holding my shirt.
Yeah, that's what I. Yeah, that's
what's happening. I don't know what to do when someone holds my shirt.
It's like when somebody grabs your shirt, who puts their arms back like this, like, oh my god, my shirt's being grabbed. Like, what do I do? I'm just
so funny.
Your natural instinct is like take somebody's hand off your shirt, like grab their hand or try to pull your shirt back off. To just stand there and be like, oh my god, I'm completely subdued. Worf has me by the collar.
That guy should wear a shirt that says hold me back, because he is the classic hold me back guy. He's like, hold me back. Oh man, I would totally, if they didn't have a Klingon right here, I'd be all over you, man. He's just so strong though. Hold me back, Jones. That's his name.
Yeah, he was the Mr. Hold Me Back. That was funny. Also, loved the actress Perrin who played Sarek's wife. I thought did a fantastic job as well. Just certain tones, certain choices, specifically when it comes to how she was repressing this knowledge that she knew that Sarek was in a kind of degenerative state. And I felt like she kind of played that, I'm his wife and this is personal and I don't want to reveal too much type of attitude. She hit those notes really well for me.
Yeah. Now on that subject, I thought that one guy, Key, whatever, Key
Key
Aloysius
Mandrosian. Yeah, Key
Mendrosian.
Mandrosian.
I was
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't know if that character was necessary. I wasn't opposed to having the character, but I didn't see why that character was needed for the plot. I felt like an extra, obviously we know that Saketh is like the key secret character, and that's revealed, like what the situation. Sarek, you need him, you need his wife. But that other guy, eh, I mean, they found a use for him, but he wasn't necessary to move the plot forward, I don't think. Not a horrible thing. I'm not against it. It was just something I noticed where I was like, I feel like if they did another pass on this, they might ask themselves, is this character necessary? And they might say no. Okay, then let's cut him. But
Yeah.
maybe there was a reason. Maybe he had more of a role in a previous iteration of the script. But anyway, played
Yeah,
well.
that's a question for Jason Okun when we get into that section. But I will
Yep.
say I agree with you 100% on that because I felt like the only reason for that character would be if there was a nefarious activity happening going on, like a takeover of his existence, his inheritance, or maybe some kind of affair between him and his wife, or something else had to be there in order for that character to be necessary, right? Kind of like when what they did to Britney Spears with the conservatorship
Yep.
situation. If that was like a theme for this, like they were trying to get him in a conservatorship so they can whatever take over his power of attorney on certain things, then that would make a little bit of sense to me. I just didn't see him being necessary in this at all as well. Certainly could have reduced it down to one assistant who could have played the function of
Yep.
both of those characters that we saw.
And that's usually how they do it. They usually have, the main person and their one assistant, or they have the main person and their one assistant and their spouse or something like that. But this one had the extra person, and the actor did it well. The role was believable. The character was fine. I just found it interesting that a lot of times in screenwriting, people will cut the fat, and that character may have been, considered fat. Again, I'm happy with the character. I think I was glad that they had the character. It just raised a Vulcan eyebrow to me, thinking like, I feel like sometimes they would generally just not have that character that didn't really play a role. So I think maybe he played a role. You're right. Well, that's a question for Jason Okun. Um, or Allyson Leach-Heid. So this
Yeah.
guy, this actor, though, his name is William Dennis, and he looks so familiar. Looks like he was in Perfect Strangers. He played a character named, well, that's something for after the break. We're not taking the break yet, but I'll just tell you now because the break's like too long, far away from now. He played a character named Dr. Tierney. That's something.
See,
Yep, Dr. Tierney, aka Dr. Tierney C. Dieckmann. He was also
yeah.
in Growing Pains. He was in Newhart, The Golden Girls.
This is the
Uh,
actor that behind you that we're looking at, who plays Sarek,
no,
or no?
no, the actor that played that key,
Uh,
Oppenheimer or
uh,
whatever is.
oh, Mendrosian guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Mendrosian. Anyway,
yeah. I've seen him before 1,000 times. I couldn't remember the one that I thought I knew him the most from.
same.
Um, I thought it was like some kind of cheat, like a Die Hard movie or something like that. That I know him the most, like something in that realm. RoboCop or something like that. Like that's where I thought I knew him from. But I'm the worst at placing faces and actors from different movies. So I just knew that I had recognized him though. So not to say anything about his acting. I like him as an actor,
Yeah,
actually.
me too. Well, here's something
Um,
interesting. There was a character today. like a background character. They like to do those sometimes. And that background character's name was Ensign Gates. So we know who that's referencing, is played by Joyce Agu. Ensign Gates. Also, I can't believe we missed this, but our good friend, oh, he must have been in the brawl scene. Our good friend, Randy James, friend of the show, was in this
Yeah.
episode. I want to go back and see. I wonder if he's the flailing guy or if he's a guy doing the punches.
I might have seen Randy. Yes, I think I did see him in this. Another person we got a sighting on was O'Brien, and
Yep.
this was like a nice little moment for him too. Consistent with what we know his character to be like. Hey, but that's my seat.
Yeah,
So
it
yeah,
reminded me very much of the Trouble with Tribbles. That fight scene, that brawl where they're kind of like fighting over nothing
yeah,
with the Klingons.
yes,
Totally reminded me of that.
yes. Except even more elaborate because there was more people in this. This was a pretty this was like a 20v20 or something to that effect. There was a lot of choreography going on from the overhead shot that they used. Um, so yeah, it was you know, pretty intense for that small moment. Um, but I did think I saw Randy at some second, and then when you mentioned it, it just kind of clicked with me. I think I did see Randy, and I'm 100% Dennis Madelon was in that scene too. So
Yeah, he's in there somewhere.
I know he is.
So another thing was the dialogue here. I thought there were a lot of good dialogue moments. Maybe we'll go into that in the second segment, but I mean, I thought that beyond that, the acting between Picard and Sarek was great. And I really loved, again, Mark Leonard's acting because
Yeah, yeah,
he just
and I
made
want to
it.
highlight that actually a little bit because Les Landau directed this episode, and I think this is one of the better Les Landau episodes I think I've ever seen. There were
Mhm.
moments that he took choices. I thought they were the right close-ups. The lighting was great when Picard was going through his conflicted kind of mind melt moment where he was living out these emotions. Um, the lighting was just well done. I thought, and the music as well. The music complemented the acting,
Yes, I love the
complemented
music.
the shots that he was taking and the lighting. So yeah, I thought altogether those were some great things because there was a lot in this. You talk about the fight scene, you talk about the performance scene where there's Data playing the violin. That's a whole staging of it. Um, there was just a lot going on. And I thought that Les Landau did a fantastic job in this episode. Might be one of my favorite Les Landau episodes.
I agree. Every time we say his name, more is less, Landau, we think about you and Aaron Eisenberg and your self-sealing stem bolts. But the truth is, he's more than just, joking about that. He's actually a great director. He did a lot of great stuff. I agree with the music, especially at the very end. The music was amazing, and especially, the Mozart thing, but that was Mozart, I guess.
Yeah.
And it was a sad song. Like they're like, oh, play a sad song by Mozart, and they found one and they played. But that was really actually an emotional, powerful, sad song, whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but it worked for me. It was great.
It was Lonely Teardrop by Mozart. Lonely Teardrop.
I don't know that one. I know Tears of the Clown by Smokey.
It's got to be a tear song, something with
Tears for
tears. But
Fears.
tears for yeah, I agree with you about the music choices. I didn't do my research on all of the violinists because I'm not really aficionado like that. So what Data was, listing off violinists, I wasn't sure if that was something that was created like in a science fiction way, or if it's accurate. He said Heifetz, Menuhin, Grokte, and Tatalia. So little do I know about it. Maybe some of our music enthusiasts on the other side will enlighten us.
Yeah, I just took a quick glance at the brawl scene. It does not, I'm not finding Randy James there yet, and he's not this guy.
It's not
Um,
that guy. Okay.
we got to find out who that guy was because he stole the show. However, we do have to take a break. There've been a lot of things I was saying. We should talk about that next segment. Well, that segment is nigh. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
Here are the trivioids of the week. Not a ton. The Enterprise is hosting the first meeting between the Federation and the Ligarians, or Ligarans, I think. Captain Picard met Michael Burnham's uncle at Spock's wedding. Just want to throw her in there. Captain Picard met Michael Burnham's uncle at Spock's wedding. Ambassador Sarek is extremely fond. Wait, no, not uncle. Hang on. Whoa. Dad.
Okay.
Captain Picard met Michael Burnham's dad at Spock's wedding. I got to get that right, or people are going to they're going to get an email writing campaign against me. To us, it's a slime pit, but to the Ligarans, it's home. Wesley Crusher has a date with Ensign Dumont. Ambassador Sarek finds Picard's work to be satisfactory. My word, Picard says. Lieutenant Worf has put Ensign D'Amato on report for insubordination, and Suzanne wanted to go to the Arboretum. So there weren't a lot of trivioids, but I sure dragged them out too long. Anyway.
You did a great job.
I said that one 3 times, and only once did I say it right. Totally not worth it. Okay. So back to the acting. What did you think of Captain Picard when he was overcome by Sarek's emotions and feelings? What do you think about all that scene? Very memorable scene.
I thought this was Picard, Sir Patrick Stewart's best acting. This was his best acting so far. This was a chance for him to showcase his range.
Yeah.
Which I believe he did an excellent job of. I think this was his episode to be like, it felt like his moment to really put on that Shakespeare performance. He gave us a Shakespeare type performance, I felt, when he was giving us that performance. I put the best acting so far when Picard does Sarek. He mentions, he says, I'm so old. And what's great about it is that he is performing it as Sarek. So when you see it, you can see that he is mentally inhabiting the space of Sarek and his emotional state. And I thought he expressively did that very well on his face by holding back emotions in the way like he didn't want to say I love you, but he was fighting it because the Picard side of this mind melt was forcing him to say these difficult things that he had been holding on to emotionally in his life. So I felt like that was one of the big things that I got from this episode was Patrick Stewart taking his time getting into this moment and really shining. And I think that the fact that Mark Leonard was there added to the bar being set at a really high level.
Yeah, definitely. So, that's definitely one of the things that's like acting 101 right there, you guys. It's like a lot of times it's more interesting to see somebody fighting the urge to say something or fighting an emotion rather than just saying the thing or having the emotion. It's more rather than somebody just being angry and yelling at somebody, it's more interesting to watch somebody fighting the urge to yell at somebody or be angry, because you could feel it. You could see that conflict. You could see that struggle. And, he did that obviously very well. It's just like in real life, we hardly ever say what we want to say. We kind of dance around it. We hardly ever show our full emotions, except for in traffic or with slow Wi-Fi. That's my full emotions come out there for sure. But otherwise, I turn into a caveman. But anyway, so yeah, really good stuff. And I completely agree. I thought the exact same thing you did with Picard. I said, this was Picard's chance to show off his Shakespeare skills. He was basically just doing Shakespeare. Who knows? He picked a character out of some Shakespeare novel that he's performed before at the Royal Shakespeare Theater or whatever. We don't know who it is. And he was like, oh, it's just like such and such, possibly. And then he just played that character because it was masterful and it was very Shakespearean, I thought, too.
It was superb. And some of the lines that he says, when he says, betrayed by desires, I want to feel. I thought that was really big because that is kind of the way that Vulcans behave, as if emotions or desires is something antithetical to them being their best selves. And so they suppress those things, right? They suppress feelings, they suppress emotions. And this was a great opportunity for us to see in this episode how suppressing those feelings and emotions actually caused this void of almost sadness, that has to be kind of confronted in this particular mind.
Yes. Vulcans make things worse for themselves oftentimes by suppressing their emotions, because then now when that emotion's coming out, it's like a volcano. Now, apparently Vulcans feel things more strongly than humans, but they suppress it. But Sarek's suppression of his emotions has created, problems in his family. Like he basically was admitting that he loves his son, but it's like you shouldn't have to admit that. It should be very obvious and open and known. But he's like basically being like, okay, I admit it. I love my son. And we're like, okay, it took all this to admit that. And I love my wife. I admit it. I love them. But, it just makes it really interesting. But yeah, good points. And I loved when he would have his tiny miniature outbursts, like when he said to Picard, "It is vital," and he kind of catches himself and slows it down. And just what a superstar.
Yeah.
Can't say enough.
And I also, this is what I would have liked the writers to get into a little bit earlier. I would have liked the chess match of Picard and Sarek to last longer. They were debating and arguing. He was essentially saying, I'm not guilty. It was like guilty versus not guilty, right? It was two sides of the coin. He's saying, I have my mind about me. I'm perfectly fine. And Picard is saying, no, you're losing your wits. And it reminds me of a conversation I had where, when do you know if you're crazy? How would you know if you're crazy, right? Like, or that you're losing your mind? How do you know that? If somebody says, oh, you're losing your mind, somebody has to tell you because you don't know it from first perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a lot of what we were dealing with in this episode. I thought it was a great episode about that, and I would have liked to see that expanded upon and stretched out more. I thought Picard could have been, because Sarek was making good logical arguments, right? There were good points that were being made. he was saying, he says you're exaggerating. It wasn't a bunch of tears. It was only one tear. Like he had like a comeback
Yeah.
for things.
He's like, well,
You know what
that's
I
still
mean?
a tear, you Vulcan.
Yes. But
Hmm.
a he said, "What are you going to base it on? Just coincidence that this thing started when I got here? That's just circumstance." So, well, again, these are kind of legal arguments, right? And somebody says, "Well, circumstantial evidence that my client was at that place when these things occurred. That doesn't mean he committed the crime." These are kinds of logical arguments that are used in trying to prove someone's innocence or guilt. And I felt like we could have used more of that in this episode since we had two heavy hitter actors that were willing to bring A game performances.
True. And I think the heart of the matter was kind of what we see in older people, like in say Alzheimer's, or other diseases that deteriorate the mind and the body. Um, I think that was the heart of this episode. And they knocked it out of the park for that bit. But if the episode were to be more about that and less about brawls and less about a couple other things, I don't know if it would have necessarily made the episode better, but it feels like we could have sunk our teeth into that more because it is a very important issue. At least to me, I really feel for those people. And when I say those people, I mean us eventually, because we're all,
Yeah.
if we're lucky enough to reach that point where we're falling apart mentally and or physically or emotionally, many people don't, but it just seems like it's such a horrible thing, to kind of be in the prison of your own body where you're not able to do the things you could do. You're not able to control your emotions. You're not able to remember the things that you used to remember. And you see some of these older people, and sometimes it really devastates them. Sometimes just something small, like not remembering a childhood friend's name, just destroys them because they're like, I always remember that name. And now I can't. And they get so hard on themselves because to you, it's like, who cares? I forget half my grocery list. But they're like, today it was Johnny's name. 20 minutes ago, it was where did I leave the pen? An hour before that, it was I took the wrong turn. It's just I feel so bad for those people. So I'm really glad that they highlighted this situation. But yeah, they maybe
Yeah.
could have sunk their teeth into
Extended
a
that.
bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would have liked to also have a little bit more about the suffering that his wife was going through. Because we know
Yeah.
when people go through these kinds of things, that their loved ones also have to suffer. And I felt like we could have got more into what she had to deal with, what she was putting up with. Maybe he was not, admitting that he loved her was a big deal. So obviously he wasn't showing her much love, right, over time. Even though she said, I always knew he loved me. Um, they could have played that the other way, where she didn't always know where she may have felt that he loved his work more than her, or his legacy. And so that could have been expanded upon a little bit. You know, it was brushed aside a little bit because they were making her like the protective wife. But I think even as a protective wife, there's still an emotional moment there when you realize this has been taking a toll on you as well, and you've been putting up with things, or pretending like things are okay when they're not. So could have been a little bit more expanding on that too, which is why I
Hmm.
didn't necessarily need this whole Sarek is there, the whole Ligarians storyline, and the whole set that they built for the Ligarian whatever. That was all wasted to me. They could have just said there's a meeting going on this planet that we have to get to, but until then we're going to be on the ship and da 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 da. I didn't need to see a whole set being built on that behalf. They could have gotten right into the meat of the story, which is, the battle with time that Sarek is fighting. And I thought Picard also gave a great line to Data when he was talking about this old age and stuff, the ravages of old age,
Yeah.
Data. And he tells him, "You still want to be us, Data?" And I thought that was a great line because that was like another Pinocchio type moment where it's like, you want to be a real boy, this is what it comes with, you know. This comes with this side of it too, which is the whole deterioration aspect. And I thought Data gave his own little wry reply when he says, "Well, in time, you know, my circuitry would also deteriorate, so I would face the similar type of fate, even though we know that's not the same thing."
Yeah, we're like, come on. Oh, poor you, Data. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's kind of like when somebody does like a thing where they're like, oh my God, my car was totaled. And somebody else goes, oh man, I know what you mean. I ran out of gas 14 years ago, like at a gas station. It was, man, it was annoying. Like
had
that's,
to push it all up the curb.
yeah, that's not exactly the same, but nice try, Data. But I will say, outstanding point about the people that these illnesses affect indirectly, because that is a huge point. You know, they created, you know, these, what is it, Al-Anon or something, for like the people that alcoholism affects, not the alcoholic themselves, but the people that the alcoholics affected. And that kind of stuff was a revelation to realize that, you know, everybody gets affected by other people's illnesses. It's not just the person
Yeah.
themselves. And that, you know, that's a huge thing. And that would have been really interesting. You're right, to see how this man's, you know, new illness is affecting his wife, or how his volcanism affects his wife. You know, maybe she's just like, you know, I do it because I love him, but it is a difficult life, you know. And Picard kind of swoops in and he's like, "Oh, would you like to come to the recital?" Like he did at first. I was like, "Hey, what's going on here, Picard?" But anyway, it turned out okay.
Well, he could also be abusive, right?
Yeah.
Verbally or physically, because if anger is a side effect, then with anger comes verbal abuse or physical abuse, right?
Hmm.
He was actually verbally abusive to Sackett, his assistant, who was
Hmm.
also a Vulcan, saving him with his own mental powers, right? He
Hmm.
was essentially draining his battery life, his
Yeah,
assistant's
that's
mental
true.
powers, and then berated him. You know, he was like, "Oh, that idiot! He's a young guy. He doesn't know crap about anything."
No, but
So imagine
you're right.
the verbal abuse he had to go undergo.
Not only verbal abuse, but uh, being distant, being unavailable to his wife. That is also, you know, that could also be considered abuse. You know, now when she married him, he was already like that, so she knew what she was getting into. So maybe, you know, maybe she's okay with that and she's fine with it. But yeah, how this is developing, you're right. He's going to snap at her. He's going to be colder. He might not even realize it or be willing to admit it. But yeah, anyway, there's a lot of stuff that could be explored here. And they explored a lot of good stuff. Could have been other stuff. But really, oh, one more thing I wanted to say on Mark Leonard. He reminded me of Tim Russ. And I feel like and he reminded me of Tim Russ today. And it was really interesting. I was like, I wonder if Tim Russ based his Tuvok at least somewhat on Sarek, not solely on Spock, because Tuvok reminds, you know, was a lot of Sarek, it felt like, not just Spock, but it felt like there was a lot of Sarek in there. And this older Sarek reminded me very much of an older, you know, current Tim Russ. Whether it's a coincidence or not, just the way the two kind of act and their demeanor and their style. And, you know, because Tim, if anybody knows Tim, he also is has an air of reverence coming at him. He's a musician, he's an accomplished actor, he's an artistic mind, he's a great guy, he's an astronomer. Like people look up to him. And he definitely had a very similar air to Mark Leonard. Probably just all a coincidence and all that, but I noticed it in several scenes. So just an interesting thought there.
Yeah, I thought of a different person. I thought of Martin Landau when I saw him.
Wow.
I got Martin Landau vibes, and actually
Mhm.
got Leonard Nimoy vibes. Like he could be,
That fits. Like he could play his dad.
he could play his dad or his
Yeah.
brother or something to
Yeah.
that effect, right?
Yeah. Well,
So
this is his dad, Spock's dad. So yeah.
yeah, so I got a lot of vibes. So
Mhm.
excellent casting, excellent acting by Mark Leonard. Like I said, I feel set the bar in this episode to the point where Patrick Stewart had to bring his ultimate A game in that final scene in order to put the little cap
Totally.
on the final picture. So yeah,
All right. Basically, what we're trying to say is it's time for the home run of the episode. Cirroc
yeah,
Lofton, who gets the home run of today's episode besides the flailing guy?
yeah. Yeah, the home run of this episode is going to go to Mark Leonard. He comes in, knocks it out of the park. We didn't get into it too much, but I do want to highlight the fact that I enjoyed the wardrobe choices that
Yeah.
the wardrobe department made for this for Sarek and his wife. I thought the jewelry was really ornate and beautiful. His wife is wearing like an opal and gold looking type of headdress with a matching necklace. So all of that was really, I thought, really good. As far as wardrobe, they also looked more mature and there's a certain dress style for people who are older than
Yes.
younger people,
True.
and they had that older dress style to their wardrobe. So all of that
Mhm.
played well for me. So hands down the and by the way, it's a close second for Patrick Stewart because I feel like this is his best acting.
I agree.
I mean, like he really gave me his best acting. I wanted more of it. That's why I felt like the back end should have been doubled. But Mark Leonard, because he came and set the tone with his performance.
I agree with you on all points. Number one, that I feel like I've seen this outfit at a retirement home in Florida. So that's for sure. That is, and also 1A and 1B are Mark Leonard and Patrick Stewart, respectively. Easy, head and
Yeah.
shoulders, great stuff. All right. Uh, Lastly, here are some friends that we would like to thank, and their names are Homer Frizzell, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Goo, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, aka Crewman Guy, My Live from Tokyo, the Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manisfee, Greg K. Wickstrom out in Hawaii. What? Jed Thompson, Dr. Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, aka Grandpa One, Chris Sternett, Chuck A., Johanna Yunker, Amiram Mizne, Nora Vega, Ed Jarrett, Steve Case, aka Joe Bugbuster, and of course, the aforementioned Jason Okun. All right, everybody, stick around. Got a lot more to talk about on the free for all. We'll be right back on the seventh rule. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the seventh rule. It is time for the free for all. Melissa Longo's here.
Hi.
Jason M. Okun also present. We've got Allyson Leach-Heid with the cool Ferengi eyes. And Eve England out in Wales. Cannot wait to hear her finally say, all right, I'm starting to like Picard. We'll see what happens.
Well, and she's got an interesting shirt too on.
Not really appropriate for
fun.
today. I felt bad putting this on today, actually.
That is a Mai and Melissa combo special shirt. Beautiful. So My Live in Tokyo is here,
Sorry.
as is Chris McGee, who lays low and prospers. TJ Jackson-Bey is out in Missouri. Chuck A, cool Stembolt and Chill shirt. Steve Case has a cool Be Kind special. Great shirt from what's the website?
Pop Hero Culture.
Yeah, but it's something merch.org.
It's Be Kind merch.
Got it. Yeah, those two are in conjunction. You could go find it at wherever Steve Case mentioned it or where Melissa Longo mentioned it all together there. Faith Howell is also here. The character from Monsters, Inc. What was the character's name?
I think it's Roz.
Roz.
Yeah,
Roz. Yeah. Very cool. Carrie Schwent, also aka Crafty Bear, and the Matt Boardman, who makes us so many cool thumbnails and awesome stuff. Thanks very much to the Matt Boardman. All right, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
Yeah, I'm gonna say that this episode was an 8.2.
Does anybody else have any guesses that doesn't already know?
9.
I gotta say higher.
Yeah.
8.5,
8.6. 8.6.
All right. All bets are in. Very close, Cirroc Lofton. 8.1. 8.1. Although hearing Eve say 9 means she's going to have some praise for Picard.
Yeah. Actually, if the second half was, if the first half was as good as the second half, it would have been like a 9.5.
Wow. 9
I
to
thought
5.
the second half was really great. Yeah.
Did we get any non-appearance mentions in this episode? I got a couple.
Two.
Mm.
Amanda and Spock.
Oh, I feel like I caught another one. What was the third one?
How about the Lagarans? Repeatedly mentioned but never seen.
Right. That was a good one. But we've never seen them. I don't even know if we know what they look like. I wish we did. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
What about Troy's dad? Don't we see Troy's dad in that one episode?
Oh, if we ever.
But I can't remember his
got a
name.
for
Ian. I think his name's
Dark
Ian.
Page? Yeah, did we?
Jordy's girlfriend.
Oh yeah.
she's always a Nam.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Great stuff there. All right. Melissa Longo, please get us started off on the right track. What did you think of this here episode?
This here episode. Well, this here episode is one that has stayed with me for years. I don't always remember every Star Trek episode ever in existence, but this one has stayed with me. It's stuck with me. It's powerful and tragic and I think beautifully done. Yeah, the acting in it was pretty great. Patrick Stewart, obviously, but Mark Lenard for me was just so wonderful to watch because he's an actor from a different era of Hollywood, and you can see the different acting styles between Patrick Stewart and Mark Lenard, and it was nice to see them work off of each other. To me, he had this grace and elegance that was similar to Brock Peters or Sir Laurence Olivier. So it was nice to see that brought in, and and that's Rocket in the background, not Mochi. But yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty powerful and moving episode. Yeah.
All right. Great stuff. Thank you very much, Melissa Longo. Faith Howell says, for the record, Memory Alpha shows a photo of Ian Troy. Memory Beta indicates he was in something, but maybe not canon. So we see a photo. Does that count? We see a photo in an episode, right?
He was in Dark Page.
Yeah.
The one
Okay.
with the sister. So
Yeah.
we take that's good knowledge. Good knowledge. All right. Jason M. Okun, you are back. Thank goodness. What did you think of this episode?
Well, it's always been one of my favorites. It's certainly a wonderful character-driven episode. Probably a perfect example that you don't necessarily need a tons of action to keep you, staring at the screen. It's one of those bottle shows that is just wonderful. There are a lot of little details, and I know Sarek mentioned that maybe the first half wasn't exactly what he expected or could have been better. But there are a lot of little details, even in the first half, that set up the second half very, very nicely. And we can talk about some of that later. But yeah, to me, you can think of it as sequels of the journey to Babel. And, as Melissa said, Patrick Stewart and Mark Leonard are wonderful in this. I mean, Patrick had that, obviously, the scene in the fifth act. That was just tremendous. And all throughout. And Mark Leonard, if you look at his performance in Journey to Babel, and you sort of look at the evolution of the character over the years, the movies, and and the way he is here, he's just you believe it's the same character. You believe it's somebody who's gone through maybe 100 years of experience. So overall, I think it's a wonderful looking show. There's just too many good things you can say about it, and I'll save a lot of that for later.
All right. Very good. Thank you so much, Jason M. Okun. Allyson Leach-Heid is here. What did you think of this episode?
It's a beautiful episode. For all the reasons already mentioned, both Mark Leonard and Patrick Stewart are quite fabulous. I want to give some kudos to Gates McFadden during her scene while Picard is mind melded with Sarek. Just the care she is taking of her patient/friend is quite beautiful to watch. So really loved her in this episode. And Worf getting all the comic relief always makes me happy. So when him saying, "Oh, I see what you mean," when they walk into 10 forward, when O'Brien is in another bar fight, made me very happy. I want to know if O'Brien is like on par with Kirk for bar fights, how many they each got to have in Star Trek. So, and I thought most of the staging and lighting in this episode also made it very beautiful to watch, because it was a darker episode, and people's profiles are in prominence, and I thought that was really lovely in how they did it. I wanted Troy to also be in the room during the mind meld for Picard, because it seemed kind of like her type of thing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, and the Vulcan costumes are spectacular, and we always need more Vulcans to get more of those costumes on screen. So
Great stuff. Thank you very much, Allyson Leach-Heid. All right, Eve. Let's hear it. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting this episode to be what it turned out to be, but I was quite blown away. It was just profoundly sad. I got to the end, I was thinking, this is just one of the saddest things I've seen, and compared to everything else we've seen, this was was just way above everything else. And I think you had the sort of, and I get why they did it. You had all of these sort of comedic sort of interactions between the Enterprise crew to kind of show that there was something not quite right with everyone. But and that was sort of just seemed to be, I don't know, a little bit crude in terms of by reference to everything else. But I could see why they had it at that sort of trigger. But I mean, that mind meld scene, and Picard's ravings, and just really did show the sort of the devastating sort of nature of something like dementia on somebody who is experiencing that, but also for all those people around them. And the fact, he was referencing, his first wife and then his new wife, and how, he was trying to come to terms with this, and all the sorrow he'd had in his life and had to sort of contain that was just, it was just so moving having that. And I think the way that Picard then had that emotion and the way that Patrick Stewart delivered that was just fantastic. And I just loved the way that they used the word bedlam and the way he used that, because I think for a Vulcan, the term bedlam is, yes, it means, a lunatic, someone who's mad, but it also just means chaos. And the fact that, you know, he just was in this place of chaos and just couldn't deal with that. And it was just so tragic. And it was just, yeah, I actually just felt quite emotional at the end of that. And I thought, you know, in terms of Picard, going back to that, I just thought, you know, that was a really good thing for him to have done as a captain, but as a human being, to sort of try and help this guy who was going through this trauma and this horrendously difficult sort of situation. I thought it was just a beautiful episode. And it could have toned down some of that Enterprise crew. I don't think it really needed all of that, because I think the rest of it was beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Sarek mentioned the same. Great stuff. Eve England out in Wales. She's finally coming over to the dark side and liking this show a bit. Speaking of the dark side, the Dark Lord, Chris McGee, is here. What's up? What do you think of this one?
Goodness, well, I can't be a naysayer. I think this is one of the best episodes of the show, primarily because, as has been mentioned, of the incredible acting by both Mark Leonard and Patrick Stewart. It's no wonder Stewart won an Emmy for his performance in this episode. Quick side note, by the way, Perrin was my father's name, and he was always a big fan of Lee and Perrin's Worcestershire sauce.
Nice. Very good.
The concert was quite an exceptional scene, I think anyway, with the unique camera dollying out from Troy over to Sarek, then dollying in on him. And so much information in that scene being conveyed without a single line of dialogue, which I don't think was all that typical for Star Trek at the time. I just remember it striking me as noteworthy, even back when I first saw it. And one other noteworthy thing, although we saw it briefly in Captain's Holiday, I didn't personally, but apparently it was there. This is the first time we get a really good look at that Mintakan tapestry that was given to Picard, and it's now draped over his chair in his quarters. And I just love that this continuity was kept ever since Who Watches the Watchers, without ever calling attention to it, you know, and it will remain there on his chair for, I think, the remainder of his career. We did get some kind-ups in this episode.
Oh, nice.
Both of them spoken by LaForge. One when he's talking with Wesley about his date, and he says, "What are you, in some kind of hurry or something?" And then later, when talking with O'Brien, just as he's confronting another crewman at 10 forward, he says, hey guys, is there some kind of problem here? And finally, the memorable quote of the episode, "My word, high praise from a Vulcan."
Mm-hmm.
Great stuff. Thanks very much. Chris McGee. All right, Mai is live in Tokyo. Mai, this episode, your thoughts?
I agree with Melissa entirely. It stayed with me for years. It's incredible. This episode, it's full of powerful drama, but it's drama that's not just played out on the screen. It's drama that's played out in the lives of those of us who are or were caregivers for senile parents. Add to that the very unique relationship many sons have with their fathers, a relationship that's often very different than any other permutation of parent and child relationships. I mean, for many years, a son yearns to be stronger than his dad. Then one day, usually in his teens, he is. It can be the saddest day of a young man's life. The realization of the power hierarchy has changed forever. Then the young man goes on to become an adult, a partner, a husband, a parent, possibly. But in any case, the leader of a unique and self-decided life. And mothers adapt very well to their sons becoming someone different than their little boy. Fathers often have a much harder time adapting to the adult version of their kid. And here, Sarek is terminal, and he has no plan to share with Spock the emotion that he revealed in a moment of weakness. He can't. It's not how he's wired. So Spock must go through his life never knowing until a non-family member helps him understand. And this lost opportunity is so real for so many men. I mean, not just for men, obviously, but a significant portion of American male society, the way it's constructed. This episode makes me feel this every single time. It has done for many years. And now with my own father gone, the even more intense feeling of never being able to reach that level of complete communication like I had with my mom. To elicit such strong emotion from viewers, that's the mark of a very well written, very well acted episode. And I give this one very high marks.
My live in Tokyo, dropping bars, truth bombs. Thanks very much, my live in Tokyo. TJ Jackson-Bey is out in Missouri. What's up, TJ? You love this episode, huh?
I do.
Nice.
And, it was always memorable for me because, as a fan of the original series, watching, the great Sarek, Mark Leonard, come onto, this new show and this new enterprise was wonderful anticipation the first time it aired. And so it's always, been a favorite. I like the way the episode was done. As a rule, a Gene Roddenberry rule was that the crew didn't really have these kind of internal conflicts. So that's like red flag number one when they start fighting with each other, that something's up. But I actually enjoyed the way that the story progressed from beginning to end. And I enjoyed watching those little flare-ups. I thought the scene between Wes and Jordy was masterfully done. You'll get more action out of a good than you'll ever see on this day. I thought it's like LaForge knocked that out of the park. They both did, and the scene between Riker and Picard, those stuck well in my memory, as well as the scene with Sarek as he begins to realize that something actually is going on, and he doesn't face it directly at first, but he does take the steps necessary for him to be able to do so. He tells Saka, hey, if you're in my mind, I need you to stop that. It might not be the best course of action, but we need that to happen so we can figure out what's going on. And I appreciated that about Sarek. He really, really logically tried to follow what was going on. And then after the mind meld, he realized how far, and how slow that progression had taken him away from who he was. Because one of the things that he says to Riker is, I am myself again. It has been a long time. And that is my favorite line from the episode. I have so much more to talk about. I'll save for later.
Wow. Love it. Thank you very much, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. Steve Case, aka Joe Bugbuster. How are you doing? What did you think of this one?
I love seeing Mark Leonard again. He's given us so many great Trek performances in the original series in TNG. Despite the ruckus first half, this ended as a tearjerker, which is, of course, not something we expect from Trek. It was clearly about aging and dementia, which is a human experience that sci-fi allows us to examine from another perspective, like sci-fi often does. Some episodes are heavy-handed with their topic, but I like that nobody actually mentioned dementia or human diseases or anything. So I liked how that was handled. And at the end, the moment where Sarek tells Picard that they probably won't see one another again, but spoiler, I know they will again one last time in season 5. So that was nice to know too.
Thank you very much, Steve Case. You might be right about that. Good stuff there. Faith Howell, what's up, Faith? What'd you think of this one?
Well, it's not one of my top favorites, but of course, as all of you guys have said, I did adore seeing Mark Leonard come back. Anytime we have those touch points back to previous episodes, either in the same series or other previous series, it's always a fun moment. I also enjoyed, as many of you guys have already mentioned, the commentary on aging. I feel like that's something that we touch on quite a few times in TNG. And this was a pretty unique opportunity because of the makeup of Vulcans to show that inner monologue and what's going on inside versus some of the other ways that we see it with Luoxana, for example. I also loved the Reading Rainbow cameo. Definitely, as a 90s child, tuned into that immediately. I had the butterfly in the sky, playing in the background as I was watching that scene. I think overall it was a really fun episode and one that I, enjoy when it comes on.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that, Faith Howell. I did not make the Reading Rainbow connection there, but maybe you are right.
Had to be a 90s kid.
Oh, that's great. Carrie Schwent is here. What's up, Carrie, aka Crafty Bear? What'd you think of this episode?
An excellent episode. And it wasn't until I decided on what kind of background I was going to go for that the episode very much is like a good Shakespearean play. Even the most dramatic ones still have your great little comedy bits thrown in. Because you've got all of the heavy with Picard and Sarek, and then you've got the awesome bits with the fun bar fight and Geordi and Wesley. That of the fights, that one is my favorite. Because Wes is one of my favorites, but this is Shakespeare's Globe behind me, and yeah, the Picard and Sarek both are very much epic, Shakespearean level master classes in acting, especially at that second half. And as I was doing a little digging, I really liked that they ended up pushing to have it be Sarek as the aging Vulcan going through this, because it just would not have hit the same way as if it had just been your random insert older Vulcan here Vulcan. So I'm very glad they pushed for that, and I'm very, very glad to Ira for him pushing to have them mention Amanda and Spock, because apparently he had to, over several days of just relentless badgering, to get that tiny little name drop even added to it. And of course, as a fan of Discovery, I mentally added, when he was calling out those names, I mentally added Michael Burnham, because we can't forget about her. But yeah, love this episode so much. And that scene with Picard just grabs your heart and just squeezes and squeezes until it's complete pulp. But to end on a lighter note, I decided for the limerick, I was going to lean towards the funny, and I came up with what could be O'Brien's inner monologue as and 10 forward for the bar fight. Okay, there we go. Was just trying to have a pint with my mates, but these guys just won't give up their space. Done talking, now here's the twist. It's time to speak with my fists. If they try to run, I'll simply give chase.
Excellent and fantastic callback to Steve Case's shirt made by Chase Masterson. All right. Thank you very much for that, Carrie Schwent. Chuck A, aka TNG Fanatic. What's up with you? What'd you think of this one?
Well, it was always one of my favorites of the season. I agree with everybody. Patrick Stewart and Mark Leonard's acting is just fantastic. I loved the scene in 10 Forward with O'Brien, and also the scene with Geordi and Wesley. I got the good fortune to meet Mark Leonard at a Sears store in Santa Monica next to the pier where I was working, and I got to talk to him for a few minutes. Really, really good guy to talk to. His acting was fantastic in the scene where they had the Mozart concert, and I thought that scene was really well done with everybody looking at him when he shed a tear. I like that scene as well. So I really loved the episode overall. Like I said, it was one of my favorites of the season.
Definitely. Great stuff. Thank you so much, Chuck A, aka TNG Fanatic. All right, the Matt, aka Matt Boardman.
Those of you who don't hablo español.
Yeah, the Nino. What do you think of this episode?
To me, this episode is tragically beautiful, in the sense that that there are a lot of messages that I think that touch upon many aspects of our own lives. Melissa really started it off well by talking about Mark Leonard, and I don't know what it is, but for me, that guy, anytime he is on screen, he just commands my attention. Like there is just something about him when he is on screen that just like, and I don't know if it's because it's like he's a parental figure, he's Spock's father, or what it is, but there is just like to me, he's like the quintessential Vulcan. Like that's others have tried to imitate that, and nobody has been able to achieve that. So I just think that that's great. But it's also like, and I say it's tragically beautiful in the sense that it reminds us of our own mortality. It's episodes like this that remind us of our own mortality. Like to me, these characters in Star Trek, they're immortal. They're they are that place that I go to for comfort and everything like that. And this episode takes that, and it kind of takes it away in a sense. It shows that they're not infallible. That here we have Sarek, who's faced with a disease that he himself doesn't want to acknowledge that he has, and how many of us have had to experience a friend, a loved one, somebody go through something like that, and finding that they, that suddenly they're now faced with something that they have no control over. And then just the last thing that I will say is that it struck me this time watching it that now Sarek finds himself in a debt of gratitude to now two Enterprise captains. The first being obviously Kirk, for everything that we saw, everything that he did to save Spock, at the sacrifice of the Enterprise, his career, possibly, and obviously not ultimately, but the taking that risk and everything. And now here we have Picard, who puts himself at personal risk to assist Sarek so that he can complete this one last time. And I just that moment at the end of this episode is just very, very poignant to me, where they talk about this moment that the two of them have shared and will always be a part of each other. And Picard says that of the two of them, he feels like he got the better part of that deal, and just that, that humility to show. I mean, for me, Picard is a great captain. He has a lot of accomplishment. He's not perfect by any means, but for him to take that step back and say, I got the better end of this deal was just, I don't know. I really enjoy that moment. So top marks on this episode all around.
I agree very much. Loved that moment and that line. Thank you very much. The Matt Boardman, Jake's final take. What do you think of this final thoughts on this episode, I should say, Cirroc Lofton?
My mom used to say, when somebody's drunk, they're telling the truth. And also when somebody's angry. And when these people were angry, they were actually telling the truth to each other about how they secretly kind of feel, which is a disappointing thing for me about Geordi, because he's hating on Wesley. And I'm like, you secretly really are jealous of this guy, because you're talking about, how much action he's going to get. And I'm thinking, that's why you don't have any dates yourself, because you're worried about the action and you're not just like getting to know somebody. It's like, it's actually really telling to me. So that's a sad thing, that Geordi actually has this secret kind of jealousy for Wesley. It's actually the truth. Just like when the scene with Riker and Picard, Riker was telling him the truth. Like, why don't you just tell him that he can't do it? He's too old. Like, just face the facts on that. And that was the truth in that moment, about how he really felt. It was accentuated certainly by whatever pheromones and Vulcan logic that is applied to this story, but still, those little bitty truths come out. And the other thing, O'Brien, first thing he does is like, didn't your mother? And I'm like, whoa, we're talking moms first? Like, yeah. Right to your mother? Like, we saved the your mother thing for last.
Such a Gen X. Your mom.
Yeah, like, whoa. My mom's? What has she got to do with this table that you're sitting at? Okay. So that was kind of, a whole nother step forward. Definitely emotional when you watch this episode. It's hard not to, like Matt was talking about, feel for your own mortality and feel how fragile life is, and how, one day we'll all get to that point of reflection about, what we've done and what we no longer can do. So I think that's just a reality, and it's one of the bittersweet things, because you want to get to that point, but the alternative is not great either. So that's one of the bittersweet things of life. And I thought, lastly, I'll say, while I was watching Patrick Stewart talk about the ravages of old age and giving up that really beautiful scene that he did, kind of explaining to Data about it, I couldn't help but think that now, as we're, almost 35 years from this scene, that the ravages of old age have now caught up himself to Picard himself now at this point, right? And the simple kind of twist of fate, or the irony of watching it at this moment for me for the first time, juxtaposing that with the passage of time is interesting as well. So, yeah, I just think of the greatness of great people that have left amazing legacy. And I also thought about how important it is to kind of go out on top, because this last mission was like, his last final game, and everybody wants to go out kind of on top in that final moment of like hit the home run and walk off, or win the World Series, or negotiate a peace treaty, or something that's your swan song type of moment. And even 500 years from now in the future, or whatever the case may be, that's still an important thing to life and how we perceive life. So yeah, that's my final say.
Awesome. All right, everybody. That's it for us. We hope you've enjoyed this installment of The Seventh Rule. Great episode. Thank you to the Matt Boardman, Chuck A., Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Steve Case, TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, My Live in Tokyo, Chris McGee, Eve England, Allyson Leach-Heid, Jason M. Okun, for myself, Melissa Sarek, and Mr. Aaron Eisenberg. Thank you all very much for hanging out with us. We will see you next time. And until then, illogical! Always remember the seventh rule.